All right, today we're diving into a legal concept that is, frankly, the stuff of nightmares. It's called malicious prosecution, and it's the law's answer when the justice system is turned into a weapon against you.
I want you to just imagine this for a second. You get framed for a crime you absolutely did not commit. You're arrested, maybe you even spend time behind bars. Your name is dragged through the mud, your savings are completely wiped out by legal fees. And then, finally, the case gets dropped. Poof, gone. Because it was all baseless. So you're free, but your life is in shambles. What do? Is there any recourse? Well, the law actually has an answer for this exact scenario. And that answer is a type of lawsuit called malicious prosecution. Now, this isn't a criminal charge. It's what's known as a tort, a civil wrong. Think of it like a shield. It's designed to protect people from having the legal system wrongfully weaponized against them by someone who's acting out of pure malice with no good reason. But, and this is a huge but, as you're about to see, actually winning one of these cases is an incredible uphill battle. Yeah, getting justice here isn't a walk in the park. It's more like an epic quest. The person who was wrongfully accused, we call them the plaintiff, has to overcome 5 extremely difficult hurdles to even have a shot at proving their case. So here it is. This is the roadmap for that quest. The plaintiff has to conquer every single one of these 5 steps. If you stumble on even one, the whole case just collapses. This is not a best 4 out of 5 deal. You need a perfect score. So let's break down each one of these hurdles. First up, hurdle number 1. You have to prove that the defendant, the person you're suing, was the one who actually kicked off the prosecution against you. Now, that sounds pretty straightforward, right? But in law, the details are everything. And here's the crucial detail. The defendant can't just be some random person who gave a statement to the police. No, they have to be what the law calls the prime mover. They're the one who actively pushed the case forward, the one who really set the wheels of justice in motion against you. Just being a witness, even if you were totally mistaken, that's not enough to get you sued for malicious prosecution. Okay, on to the second hurdle. And this is where the climb gets really steep. The plaintiff has to prove a negative. You have to prove that the defendant had absolutely no reasonable or probable cause to think you were guilty. This is actually a 2-part test. It's not just about what the accuser subjectively thought. It's about what a normal, reasonable person would have thought with the same information. So 1, did they have a genuine belief you were guilty? And 2, was that belief based on reasonable grounds? Actual facts. A gut feeling, a wild suspicion. That's just not going to cut it in court. This hurdle is there to protect people who genuinely, even if mistakenly, report what they think is a crime. So, if you thought that last one was tough, well, welcome to what's basically the final boss of this quest, proving malice. This means you have to somehow get inside the defendant's head and prove they acted with an improper motive. Now, in legal speak, malice doesn't just mean what we think it means, like personal hatred or spite, though it definitely can be that. Legally, it means the defendant had any motive other than just seeing justice done. Maybe they wanted to ruin your business, maybe they were trying to extort money from you, or maybe they just wanted to cause chaos. The point is, the prosecution was started for a reason it was never intended for. This next hurdle is a little more black and white, but it is an absolute deal breaker. Before you can even think about filing a malicious prosecution lawsuit, the original criminal case against you has to be officially over, and you have to have won. So what does a win look like here? Well, it could be a full acquittal after a trial, it could be a judge discharging you from the case, or it could be that the entire proceeding was formally quashed or dismissed. Bottom line, the legal system has to officially clear your name before you can turn around and sue the person who put you through that whole mess. And finally, we've reached the last hurdle. It's not enough to just say you were wrongfully accused. You have to prove that the accusation caused you actual, real, legally recognized harm. The law generally recognizes 4 main types of damage here. First, damage to your reputation, the social stigma. Second, damage to your person, which includes being arrested or held in custody. Third, damage to your property, and that's a big one because it covers all those massive legal fees. And finally, damage to your mental state, the stress, the anxiety, the pure humiliation of it all. You have to prove you suffered in at least one of these ways. So we've walked through the 5 hurdles in theory. Now, let's see how they actually play out in the real world. We're going to look at a couple of major court cases that have really shaped this area of the law. This first case, Mohammed Amin, asked a really critical question. When does a wrongful accusation actually become something you can sue over? The court's answer was pretty groundbreaking. They said it's not about reaching some specific technical stage in the legal process. The right to sue starts the second the person suffers damage. This was a huge deal because it shifted the focus from legal red tape to the actual real-world harm that was being done to the individual. Now, check out this more recent case, Vidhyadhar Sunda. This one really shows you just how incredibly high the bar for proof is. The court basically ruled that the plaintiff has to prove the defendant knowingly, as in they knew it was false, made false statements, or straight up fabricated evidence. This just hammers home the point that simply being found innocent isn't enough. You have to prove the accuser acted with deliberate dishonesty. To really get a handle on what makes malicious prosecution unique, it's super helpful to compare it to another related legal wrong, something called false imprisonment. They sound similar, but they are worlds apart. So let's put them side by side. False imprisonment is when you're unlawfully held without any legal process. Malicious prosecution, on the other hand, is the abuse of the legal process itself. But the single biggest difference? It's the burden of proof. With false imprisonment, the defendant has to prove they had a right to restrain you. But with malicious prosecution, the whole massive burden is on the plaintiff, the victim, to prove all 5 of those insane hurdles we just talked about, including malice. And that's why it is so much harder to win. All right, so after navigating all of those hurdles, court cases, and comparisons, what are the big takeaways? What's the bottom line when we talk about the price of justice in these situations? If we boil it all down, it comes to this. A plaintiff has to prove all 5 essential elements. There was a prosecution, there was no probable cause for it, there was malice, the case ended in your favor, and you suffered damage. And remember, malice means any improper motive, not just simple hatred. The burden of proof is incredibly high, and it falls completely on the person who was already victimized. The whole point of this law is to strike a really delicate balance, to encourage people to report real crimes while also giving some kind of remedy to people who have the legal system itself used against them as a weapon. And that kind of brings us to our final thought here. The law sets the bar for proving malicious prosecution incredibly high because it doesn't want to scare people away from reporting real crimes. That makes sense. But does that high standard truly protect the innocent person whose life has been destroyed by a false claim? Or does it, maybe, inadvertently shield the very people who make those false accusations in the first place? It's a fundamental question about where we draw the line to protect everyone involved. Definitely something to think about.